This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver dealer with Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized, private service from one of the oldest and best respected companies in the business. 30 years strong, A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, zero complaints, licensed and bonded, insured delivery or vault storage or IRAs, excellent prices, privacy and confidentiality, pay by check, money order, ACH or wire, satisfaction guaranteed. Call me directly at 419-819-9209 or my associate at 310-562-6400 or email us at kaiser@milesfranklin.com. Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We have a returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He joins us again this Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Andy, thanks for coming back on for this weekly update.
Always great to see you, Dunnigan. Thanks for having me again.
We always appreciate your insight into what's going on the ground in the supply chains of the retail precious metals, everything from spot price to premiums to availability and backlogs and products. So right now there's a bit of a buzz going on that we wanted to, as we have in the past, try to just address head on, not wanting to add any fuel to a fire of rumors, but at least make sure people are aware of what the concerns are. There's been some talk about tightness for some time. You've talked to us about many people, not just people, but institutions and governments and funds pulling physical metal off of various exchanges and so on, wanting to get physical possession. But most recently, there's a concern about the risk that people may not even realize they're subject to when they've tried to take care of business for their family by participating in metals ownership, and they're told, perhaps by their financial advisor or just a friend or whatever, that they are owning gold and silver, when in fact they are owning unallocated or pool allocated participation in some store of metal or an ETF like GLD or SLV. We had Australian economist John Adams on our show last week breaking open that story to make sure that people are aware that if they only have what he calls synthetic participation in metals, they don't really have legal title or ownership of the underlying metals. And if push comes to shove, they may be at the end of the line and not being able to get their hands on any. So can you bring us up to date on what the concerns are and what the difference is, so people are crystal clear on the difference between physical ownership of gold versus pooled and unallocated or ETF ownership of gold?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's rule number one. When you have someone with custodianship of your metal, you definitely want it to be segregated and allocated in your name. Period, 100%. When you have unallocated programs, very often they're free storage, and you get what you pay for in life. There are no free lunches. Free storage, typically, to me, would make me very nervous. I've run a storage program with Brinks for a decade. There is no such thing as free storage. The companies have the cost of the brick and the mortar, of the insurance, of the employees, of everything. There is costs involved with storage, period, let alone the insurance. I'm familiar with the whole allocated, unallocated story. I'm familiar with the buzz around the Perth Mint. It's not new. This has been going on for a long time. Jason Hommel brought it up a decade ago almost. Andy Hoffman, who worked for me, brought it up after that, wrote about it in both cases. And they refute it, and some of their arguments are convincing. But here again, let's go back to last year. Shay Russell, who works for Agora in Australia, reported last year that publicly that while the Perth Mint was supplying gold to the COMEX, when the COMEX was running into problem with the big spread between spot and physical, the COMEX sent across the Atlantic a whole bunch of kilo bars. But at the same time, Shay was reporting that people in Australia who were trying to get precious metals had no luck and were told they had to wait months on end. So this was front and center last year. In my world, I recommend this as it pertains to precious metals IRAs all the time, and that there are some IRA storage facilities that pool the metal and they don't segregate it. This is why I recommend the Dakota Depository through New Direction or Entrust, because it is fully segregated. And if you ever are going to take possession of your metal, period, whatever account you're in, whether it be the Perth Mint or it be an IRA, you want segregated in your name. You get what you pay for, because when the chips are down and you need to take possession, whether it be for an emergency that everyone equates and associates gold with, or an opportunity. You want to get your stuff. Now, one of the rumors that's swirling is that there are people who are requesting delivery of their metal out of Perth Mint. This is what's going on. And when you're in a pooled account at the Perth Mint, you first have to fabricate it in order to take possession. And that fabrication process takes time. And, right now, the stories that are out there are claiming people have to wait as long as 6 months or many months anyway to get in line to get their product fabricated, and then you take possession of it. So, that's where you run into problem. And as far as I know, the Perth Mint unallocated program is no storage fee. And so, if it's not allocated in someone's name, maybe they have the justification of not charging a storage fee. I'm not sure, but personally, makes me uncomfortable. I think when you own precious metals, you want to remove counterparty risk as much as possible. And if you're going to trust someone enough to hold it, well, then let's trust it so that it's got your name on it and it's validated and verified with a third-party auditor. So, I have met very few people who actually own allocated metal at the Perth Mint, maybe two. And because the cost is very high at the Perth Mint, I think it's 1%. Now, that was a year or two ago when I viewed that. But 1% on an allocated program is very high in terms of what storage costs normally cost. So it's convenient and easy and free to do an unallocated certificate program from one of the 6 major mints in the world, who, I will say publicly, has been a savior to Miles Franklin over the last 2 years with physical kangaroo silver product. Literally, they have performed better for U.S.-based dealers than the other 5 major mints combined, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a justification, and a strong one, for being allocated and segregated in any storage program, whether it be the Perth Mint or an IRA or any entity altogether. And I would say to someone in one phrase, anything other than that is penny wise and pound foolish. And you never realize how important it is until you need it. And then you're told, well, it's going to take some time for us to fabricate it. And there's a bunch of people ahead of you. And well, what if the time is of an essence? And so anyways, bottom line, I would say is that I'm not disparaging or saying anything untoward about the Perth Mint, simply to say I don't like unallocated programs of any sort, period. I think it's penny wise and pound foolish. And in the end, you could very well regret that by saving some money in the long run. You end up putting yourself, I think, in a compromised position when needed. And that's really the key takeaway here.
Yeah, John Adams went as far as to exhort people, if they really want to know that they can get access to their metals when they need it, and that there is, in fact, the proper amount of metals underneath their account, whether they're owners of SLV or GLD or whether they're in any other unallocated or pooled storage. He said, just get out of that, liquidate it today, get into physical, and or into a fund that guarantees that there is the physical there, and that way you don't have to be that person wondering when the times get tough and when the system is locking up or whatever, that you're going to be the one waiting in line and being told months or more to get access to your metals.
Well, GLD and SLV are two of the most nefarious products I've ever seen, I've ever experienced. And I would implore anyone who owns those 2 funds to read pages 6 through 12 on the prospectus, titled Risk Factors. And you can see just how far removed you really are from allocation and how you have no recourse other than cash settlement. And, it's a price representation, and not even a real good one at that, because the funds do reserve the right, and they do, to take fees out of the stash of gold and silver. Plus, it can be shorted. And, over the past few weeks, it's very interesting. I just, as a sidebar here, over the past few weeks, SLV has experienced 90 million ounces withdrawn in physical. Well, that wasn't you and me and Joe Sixpack from down the street. That was the commercial banks. The only people that are allowed to withdraw metal out of the fund are the authorized participants, those who funded the baskets, the Goldman Sachs's and the JP Morgans and the Citibanks of the world. 90 million ounces was backdoored as the price was pushed down. Does that sound like what we've been talking about for a long time, where big money is using the price to pull metal off of the system? And in an environment like this, where COMEX delivers 50 million ounces this last delivery month, maybe almost 55 by the end of the month, 90 million is backdoored out of SLV. I don't know how many millions of ounces were taken off of exchange for physical in London, but you're seeing big money repatriating their metal in this environment where big money is front running whatever it is that's coming next. I do not feel comfortable with an unallocated position. The bottom line is, I mean, look at it as a food supply, right? It's a food supply for your family. Do you want your food supply unallocated, or do you want to be able to run to wherever it is stored and get your food and go? Or do you want to wait in line for everyone else to bag your food that you're 500th in line? Now, it's a poor analogy, but the point should get hammered across here. If something is as important as your wealth and something that you've given considerable thought about to protect, to hedge, to do whatever your motivation is, it ought to be in your name. And if you're trying to save a few cents to do it unallocated, you're going to get what you paid for at some point. Not always, but in the case of SLV and GLD, as you mentioned, you have no exposure to precious metals other than to track the actual paper price, which is, by some estimations, a little bit of hogwash in and of itself. So the real thing, like Richard Russell always said, in the end, it's about number of ounces that you own, period, that you own, not that you have a representation of the price, but that the physical metal that you own. Moral of the story, done again, it really is penny wise and pound foolish to do anything other than be segregated. And when you need it, you'll realize that. And when everyone realizes they need it, good luck getting fabricated. It already is so hard to get metal, and especially in a timely fashion. This is the late stages of whatever is coming. Some may say it's the early stages, but it's the late stages in terms of being able to be picky and choosy about what you want to do in terms of picking the actual physical product. So if you're going to buy the product, pay the money to have it stored and allocated and audited, you'll be glad that you did, period, end of story, exclamation point.
Yeah, one of the things you just mentioned, I did want to ask you specifically, so what is your weekly update to us on availability of product and what you're seeing? Because I get asked every week by people who want to know, and I don't know how to answer the question, and maybe none of us does, but at least what we're seeing currently would at least you be closer to that. They're saying, gee, do you think with the current actions of the administration and with the Fed and everything, do you think the spot price is going to go up or down? Do you think premiums are going to go up or down? Do you think availability is going to get tighter, or is it starting to loosen up? Things calming down now from the silver squeeze we had in late January going into the first part of February. And I do reflect to people my personal experiences that we're still getting a heavier than normal volume of calls, heavier than normal demand, although it's not at the intensity that it was that first half of February, for example. And also just that as we've tried to run weekly specials and things do get sold out and we have to go on to a back order situation, that kind of thing. So I'm still seeing that any proposals that I make to people, they cannot assume, and I remind them that those products won't necessarily be there a week or 2 weeks later. But just checking with you on the ground, if what you're seeing on the overall picture of availability, premiums, and back order, backlogged for physical product availability.
The physical product availability is still ridiculously difficult. It's a full-time job. Now, I've said this on a few podcasts. I say it to a lot of people I talk to. I'm not saying this for any other reason, but it's the complete and honest truth. I've been at this for 31 years. Our pool of supply is deeper than most. We work with all the primary distributors. We work with all the major mints. We work with a myriad of small and mid-sized companies and coin shops and the whole 9 yards, so that we continue to have product in. As it pertains to the Perth Mint, we bought 75,000 silver kangaroos. We bought them almost a month ago. We won't get them until April. We had to pay upfront, pay all the money upfront, all of it, including the premium, and wait until April. Now, a lot of companies don't have the resources or the inclination to do this. This is how I've had supply, period, going back to December. And I've talked about this and given kudos to Chris Martinson and Peak Prosperity, who alerted me to the importance of getting in front of this. And since that day, late December 2020 that's been our primary focus, working 24 hours a day to get this done, whether it be with the Perth Mint or the South African Mint or the UK Mint or the Austrian Mint or on and on and on. It's a full-time job that is not getting easier, that you have to pay further in advance to get in front of everybody. You got to pay full boat. You got to pay highest premiums ever. No one is selling us anything. We have no secondary market product coming in. It's all 2021. Is it easy? No. When you see Silver Eagles that we're going to offer on special at $8.99 over the price of silver, and that puts us as inexpensive as anybody in any quantity, that is, that's $5 over, almost $6 higher than I've ever sold them for the other 29 years that I've been doing this. So that would say to me no. And you see a growing interest, a wider subsection of people that are interested in precious metals for the first time ever. I don't see it getting any better. I haven't seen it really get any better at all since the beginning of 2020. And I keep saying that I've been told, and I haven't validated this, so don't hold me to this, but I've been told by some pretty reliable sources. We're one of 27 U.S. Mint authorized resellers, so I know some people on the inside, and I'm being told that the U.S. Mint very soon is going to shut down for upwards ends of 2 months to retool their facility for this new Eagle program, the Silver and Gold Eagle, with the security features in it, which I'm not sure what they are. My guess would be micro engraving like the Royal Canadian Mint does. But if you shut off the U.S. Mint in terms of its supply to North America, you're going to see what I've been talking about in spades, because then you're going to have to be reliant upon the RCM, which really has been just as backordered and inefficient in supply as the U.S. Mint has. So if you're dealing with that, which you have your two sources in North America other than the private refineries, very quickly you're going to see that spill into the RCM, and they're going to have a hard time getting product. And now you just cut off 2 of the 6 major mints in the world. The rest are across the Atlantic Ocean. And so I guess all I'm simply saying to you is that I do truly believe that this issue of high premiums, difficulty getting product, will remain. When you talk about prices, you couldn't ask for a more bullish backdrop. Tons of money printing, capped nominal interest rates. We've talked about this before, which mean negative real interest rates. Massive demand industrial, the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative, the largest infrastructure program in human history, connecting 65% of human population. And it's not just with rails and roads and maritime channels, it's digitally. The need for silver, on top of a Green New Deal, on top of Tesla, and on top of Apple and Samsung, the need for silver is incredible. And it's growing. And when you see a growing awareness on the monetary side as well, I would say to you that this is the new reality until it's not.
All right. Well, yeah, that's one of the things that people, when they've asked, I know we've had Rick Rule on, we've had the Pamela and Marianne Aiden from the Aiden Forecast on, and the answer that they keep coming back with is until the macro environment that are the driving factors of the current rush to metals change, until those factors change, we should still remain in a metals bull market, and that's all those factors that you just mentioned. We don't see any lessening of runaway fiat currency creation or debt creation and interest rates and all that.
Or normalization of interest rates. And they can't normally. Again, if interest rates get above 3%, we will be taking in more, or we will pay more money just on the interest of the debt than we will all the tax revenues that are coming in the door. I mean, if you're paying more money just to pay the interest on your Visa bill than you make all year long, are you insolvent? The answer is yes. You're not even touching the principal. So until that happens, until we see interest rates firmly above the level of inflation, which can't happen or the whole system implodes, it's the best environment for precious metals ever. So, just as much as they're holding down the price, the question should be asked, well, why is the price being held down? And that's part of the reason. It's the canary in the mine shaft. It blows up the whole system. And, we're closer to that happening than we ever have been. Does it mean it's going to happen today or tomorrow or next week? No. But mathematics and economics have a way of working themselves out. All the manipulation in the world only coils the spring tighter. So I would simply say to people, yeah, this is the most precious metals friendly environment I've ever seen in 3 decades. And I can't see how the Fed ever normalizes their balance sheet without the whole house of cards coming down. And by the same token, how does the Treasury and the Fed stop being accommodating and stop adding stimulus and supporting the asset prices? If they don't, the whole thing comes crashing down. It's a very, very tenuous position. It will be interesting to see what the FOMC meeting brings out here in the next few days. But here again, what can Jerome Powell do other than lip service? If he does anything substantive, the markets throw up. And when you have stocks, bonds, and real estate at all-time highs in bubble territory, all correlated together instead of inversely correlated like stocks and bonds used to be, it's a game of Jenga or musical chairs. Pick your game, and at some point the house falls or there's not a chair left. And I say that to you with all sincerity. I mean, look, like I've always said, I feel like a little boy who cries wolf sometimes, but the wolf comes at the end of the story. And I say that because I base all of my formulations or my conclusions on economics, on mathematics, and I don't see how it plays out any other way.
In the face of all of that, you mentioned to me before we started this an opportunity that you let people hear a glimpse of when you were starting this discussion. Of all of the investable products that people have requested over the past year, 6 months, 3 months, every single period, the number one most requested to me has been American Silver Eagles. And we used to have them typically in stock, or we could get them and they were at a fairly comparable premiums to other things, typically at the top of the heap though. But they've been just almost untouchable, either unobtainable or at sky high premiums recently for the last several months. So right. I don't want to spoil all the beans, but you said that for our weekly special this week, you're going to surprise us all with...
I have secured 60,000 Silver Eagles, and it was not easy to do. And we're going to do those at any quantity at $8.99 over. And, when I say that, I literally almost choke saying $8.99 over like it's a special. But in reality, it really, truly is in comparison to what we see out there right now. And that's any quantity. I think that'll be as good of a price as anywhere in the country for any quantity. And, it's not easy to get them. It really is not easy to get them at all. In fact, it's really, really hard to come by them. And I was lucky enough to take part in a very large estate transaction where we funded the whole thing and we were able to buy them. Look, I love Silver Eagles. There's a lot of reasons to love them, and people like them. And in fact, if you listen to Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter, they talk about information that they have that leads them to believe that American products would be the only thing that wouldn't be confiscated in a reset. And if for those listeners that are interested, I would urge you to go listen to Jim Sinclair's rationale on JS Mindset, where he talks about this. And a lot of people have been asking me about that lately. Look, Silver Eagle is the top of the heap. Is it worth it to pay those high premiums? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't see them getting any easier to get or the premiums decreasing. In fact, 2021s would be well north of $10. So, and it's been this way. Then again, you would admit this for basically a year. So, normally things normalize after a few months. Not the case anymore. And as I seem to have a bad habit of bringing up on every single interview that we do, I talk about what Rick Rule has always said: this allocation across the whole U.S. investment matrix that for the last 40 years has averaged 2.5%, but at the beginning of COVID was 1/2 of 1%. And he uses the term from John Q. Public all the way to the Harvard Investment Endowment Fund. And 2.5% allocation over 40 years is the average. 8% was the ownership average in 1980, 1/2 of 1% in 2020. As we regress to the mean, if just 2.5%, that's a 5-fold increase if we just regress to the mean. Well, this industry has already proven it can't handle whatever regression we've already made, whether it be Now it's 1% or 0.75%. The industry can't handle it. What happens if it's 10%? If everyone who has investments put 10% of their money into precious metals, I mean, that history has a way of repeating itself. It wasn't always that way. In 1980, no one wanted stocks and bonds. They just wanted gold coins and silver dollars. What if history repeats and we move closer towards a 10% allocation instead of a 1%? There's nothing left for anyone else. And that's where my thinking goes. I think you have to think macro. You have to think big picture. You can't just look at what's in front of you. You got to see the landscape in total. And at some point, people have to wake up and realize that we've all been lied to by the establishment. And that really, truly, that maybe the road to retirement isn't just paved with mutual funds and stock certificates. Maybe you should have some hard assets. After all, it's been wealth for almost 6,000 years. So to me, when that realization happens, and it is happening, and I'd be lying if I said otherwise. This Reddit phenomenon is fantastic. It's revigorated me. It's given me a renewed confidence that this market is nowhere near dead. I would think about that, by the way, in years past as my clients were aging. Maybe my favorite client that I ever had in 30 years was on the ship next to the USS Arizona and watched his friends perish. I loved the World War II generation people, but those are the people that have been talking to for 30 years, the people who sadly are leaving us. And the greatest generation of all time, the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And they're leaving us. And I often would wonder late at night, geez, is my business, is it dying with this group of people who realize precious metals for what they are as wealth? Is it dying with them? And I would have, at some point, there would have been a part of me felt, yeah, maybe it is, because the new people who are coming into enough money to invest, they don't look to precious metals. Well, that was true. It's not anymore. This Reddit phenomenon has lit a fuse under people's willingness to accept alternatives, to look under the hood, to maybe look past the conventional narrative. So for me to say to you, I expect a ratio or a level of interest that regresses to that 2.5% average, I think it will happen. I think it'll blow through it. I think we'll get closer to the 8% average that we saw in 1980 before it's all said and done. And in that environment, all the things we're talking about now would never be more important, and in particular allocation and not being penny wise and pound foolish in lieu of a pooled account instead of a segregated account where your stuff is there, it's audited, and it's yours, and you can get it at a beck and call instead of being thrust to the back of the line and waiting who knows how long to get your stuff in an environment where that wouldn't be a good thing.
As you know, and as most of our viewers know, our channel used to be Reluctant Preppers. We've always talked for these 9 years about being aware and prepared and having a plan B. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it. That's been true whether it's talking about food or tools or transportation or relationships for people who you need for their coordination and cooperation on communication or services. It's like if you don't have that go bag that you can grab and be able to be mobile if you need to, just having your plan, if your only plan or if your primary plan is, well, I have a certificate that I can, if if everything's working, I can get in the line and request my stuff or whatever. It's like there's nothing like having the real thing.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Dunnigan, but honestly, I hope people rewind that and listen to that twice, because I could see how I could have poo-pooed that at one point. 2020 opened my eyes to just how wise advice that is. And one of the reasons that I don't talk about what I do so much with my friends is that reason, because, the reason is, what is that saying? That's saying that everything isn't always going to be perfect. And if you don't have a plan B, if you don't, it's no different than saying, no, I don't keep a spare tire in my car because my tires will never go flat. Well, what happens when you're, up north in the woods late at night driving to a cabin and it's dark out and you get a flat tire? Now what happens? You'll realize how important it is to have a flashlight, to have a spare tire, to have a jacket in your car, whatever. The point I'm getting at is that if you're not prepared and the what hits the fan, you're going in the fan with it. And so I think that what you just said, it really, to me, 2020 crystallized that. And, you remember what it was like trying to go to Costco in March when everyone else was trying to do it? Well, that's what's going to happen when the people with unallocated accounts try to rush to allocate or to fabricate. This is what I'm getting at. Why add that angst and that potential, that potential stress and problem when you don't have to? And so I think this is a really important topic. And it's also one other thing I'd like to mention. All storage fees are tax deductible when you sell. They become part of the cost basis of the initial investment. So keep that in mind out there, people, when you're trying to gauge, should I be allocated or should I save some money and go pooled? When you pay those storage fees, they become part of the cost basis of your initial investment, adding to the cost. Therefore, when you sell it, you have less of a taxable burden. So it's not as bad as you think, but you get what you pay for, and that's peace of mind. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront, Dunning. And truthfully, I think it's really something that shouldn't be brushed under. There should be an exclamation point bolded in red, and rewind and listen to that statement again. It's really important.
On the special, the American Silver Eagles, can you explain to us, are those available you mentioned that they aren't 2021s, so they're backdated, but are they available in sealed monster boxes if people want to get whole mint boxes of 500 coins?
I'd like to expose another myth in this industry with that question. A lot of the companies, I'm not mentioning any names, but a lot of those online companies will tell you that a box from 1997 or 99 or 201 or 204, whatever, that they're worth more money. Well, I'm selling them to you all at less money in sealed boxes. You get whatever you want. You can buy a tube of 20 or a box of 500. Of the 60,000 coins that we have in, I would assume that the majority, if not all of them, are coming in sealed boxes. So yes, we will have sealed boxes. I don't know the dates, but in reality, a sealed box from 1986, the first year they made it, should be in as good of a condition as from 2021. When they're in tubes, they will look perfect in the year 3000. So as long as they are kept in the tubes, then there's no oxidation, there's no dings or scratches or any of that stuff. So yes, they're back dates. They came from a large estate sale. They're in sealed boxes primarily, and people can get whatever they want at that same price.
All right, folks, don't tell us we didn't tell you when you come later asking for, can I get some of them Eagles a few months from now? Maybe not, because this is where they are. So Andy Schectman, CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, as always, thanks for joining us on Liberty and Finance for this weekly market update.
I love being here and associating myself with a fine gentleman like you. Dunnigan, they don't get any better in every way. So thanks for having me and spreading the word and allowing me to sleep a little better at night, knowing that you and I together are doing our part. So anyways, I'll look forward to seeing you next week. You have a great rest of yours, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Andy. If you've decided that now is the right time for you to protect your family's financial future by acquiring physical precious metals, gold and silver, I'm delighted to let you know that I have now become a licensed dealer's representative for Miles Franklin, one of the oldest and most trusted names in bullion dealerships. And we can provide you with physical delivery to your personal possession or to professional vault storage or precious metals IRAs. Just email me at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com, and please include your name and phone number in your email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll get right back with you and find out how to best meet your needs so that you can either begin or increase your acquisition of physical precious metals now and protect your family's future starting today. To acquire gold and silver, just go to libertyandfinance.com. When the main site comes up, click on Bullion Sales. That's libertyandfinance.com, Bullion Sales. You'll see my name, Dunnigan Kaiser, my phone number, and my associate, Kaiser Johnson, his phone number, our email, libertyandfinance@protonmail.com.